Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, one of the more hotly contested conversations that we've seen play out on Twitter, on the message boards. Bryce Underwood versus Tavien St. Clair. What quarterback are you taking heading into their college football careers, and why is it so hotly contested? Well, Bryce Underwood, five-star quarterback going to Michigan. Tavien St. Clair, five-star quarterback going to Ohio State. Which quarterback would you rather have? That's the conversation I want to get into over the next 10 to 15 minutes. I want to start with this, though. You can have this conversation with fully respecting how good both of these quarterbacks are. I take it back to the conversation that we saw play out in the college football landscape about the Heisman Trophy winner. If you were on the Ashton Genty side of things, for some wild reason, it wasn't about Ashton Genty being a good football player. It was somehow that Travis Hunter's not a good football player. He's just average at two positions. And then vice versa. If you were on the Travis Hunter side, you're looking at Ashton Genty and saying, he ain't that good. He's putting up a lot of numbers at the G5 level. You can fully respect that both of these quarterbacks are very, very good heading into the college football careers while choosing one of them. That's kind of the approach I have going into this. Want to stack these two quarterbacks, not only off of, what they were ranked coming out of high school, but what do the numbers tell us from their high school careers? What does the film tell us from their high school careers as well? I got some player comps I want to give to each of these quarterbacks as well. At the end of the day, the quarterback duels that we are going to see every last Saturday of November, it's going to be elite over the next couple of years. And I think both of these quarterbacks put Ohio State and Michigan respectfully in kind of the driver's seat to compete for Big Ten championships and national championships. These are, in my opinion, the two top quarterbacks in the 2025 class. And you could throw Keelan Russell in there from Alabama. After those three quarterbacks, to me, there is a significant gap between the rest of the quarterbacks in 2025. And so from a pure quarterback play standpoint, both Michigan and Ohio State, in my opinion, putting themselves in the driver's seat going forward the next couple of years. Now, I want to get into this comparison. Before we do, and as always, Michigan fans, Ohio State fans, I'm guessing the primary listeners of this episode, let it fly in the comment section. We would love to see some discussion down there. And I already know it's going to be a little bit of a battlefield down there. I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Michigan fans should be riding with Bryce Underwood. Ohio State fans should be riding with Tavien St. Clair. You ride with your guys. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, what do the rankings say? 3 out of the 4 recruiting services rankings have Bryce Underwood as the number 1 quarterback in the country. The only recruiting service that has Tavien St. Clair over Bryce Underwood is Rivals. They have him as the number 1 quarterback in the country. Rivals has Bryce Underwood too. The one thing I'm looking at on 3, having Tavien St. Clair number 5, I just don't understand how you can justify that one. I could see if you wanted to put Keelan Russell in this group of 3, the who's going to Alabama. Outside of those 3, I think there's such a significant gap. And I'm not saying guys like Hassan Longstreet are bad quarterbacks. I'm a big fan of Hassan Longstreet. But from a pure talent and trait standpoint, I think Bryce, Tavien, and Keelan Russell are clearly the top 3 quarterbacks in this class. And for on 3 to have him as the number 5th quarterback in the country, to me, is absolutely wild. Now, this is the more, I think, exciting conversation to get into, and that is, hey, well, what did the numbers say? Let's take a look at what Bryce Underwood and Tavien St. Clair did over the last couple of years at the high school ranks. And when you're having discussions around stat lines at the high school level, I don't love this conversation because there's differences in level of play. And that goes for just evaluating high school kids in general, right? If you're going to evaluate a guy that's playing 7A ball down in the state of Georgia versus out there in Idaho, it's different. The stat lines are going to look a little bit different. Bryce Underwood, 11,500 yards passing, 65% completion percentage, 152 touchdowns to only 13 interceptions. The thing that jumps out to me about Bryce Underwood, that touchdown to interception ratio is incredible. And then you look at Tavien St. Clair, equally impressive, 10,000 passing yards, a 68% completion percentage. That checks out on the film. Tavien St. Clair and his accuracy and his ball placement, it's some next level stuff. 104 touchdowns to 22 interceptions. If you did get a little bit nitpicky with Tavien St. Clair's, he's a gunslinger, and he's not afraid to put the ball in harm's way and really fit it into some tight windows. And sometimes that gets him into some hot water with some turnover worthy plays. At the end of the day, he knows what he's capable of, and he's going to test those limits with kind of fitting it into some tight windows. Both really, really prolific numbers throwing the football. One of the biggest differences that you see between Bryce and Tavien St. Clair, and this is largely one of the reasons I might be taking Bryce out of these two quarterbacks, is Bryce Underwood running the football. No, nobody really talks about it because of how good the arm talent is and how productive he's been throwing the football. He's not this one-dimensional, just a really good athlete who sometimes can throw a thing. He is an elite athlete running the football. And at Belleville, Michigan, they did a lot of stuff to kind of scheme him up and run the football with him. That's kind of what separates me. And you look at Tavien St. Clair and say, look, I'm not saying Tavien St. Clair is not a very good athlete. I mean, 6'4", 225. He is a very good athlete that not only can run the football and get it done with his legs, but extend plays, get outside the pocket, throw off platform. He can get himself out of trouble, which is becoming such an important aspect of college football. You don't need to be Lamar Jackson running the football, but are you athletic enough to extend plays and kind of make something happen? Tavien St. Clair certainly has that type of athleticism. And one thing you like about Tavien St. Clair, he's hard to bring down. Yeah, 6'4", 225. He's going to be bigger than a lot of linebackers that are trying to tackle him. That's something that certainly adds to Tavien St. Clair's game. Now, when you try to determine which quarterback you're taking, you want to look at some of the physical traits, right? Let's start with frame. Bryce he has an elite frame. I gave him a 9 out of 10 because you probably want to see him gain a little bit of weight. It's a little bit of a slender frame right now, but I think that frame will become a 10 out of 10 once he enrolls with Michigan, puts a little bit more weight on. He's got plenty of frame to put that weight on, kind of similar to J.J. McCarthy, who, also had a slender frame coming out, added some weight as he kind of worked his way up through the Michigan program. Tavien St. Clair, that is a college football ready frame. 6'4", 225. He is so developed physically with that frame. You got to give him a 10 out of 10. Arm talent. They both have 10s. Now you can start nitpicking some things. You look at Bryce Underwood. Accuracy is really good. I'd probably give Tavien St. Clair the slight edge. Tavien St. Clair, he can thread it into some really tight windows. Deep ball, they both throw phenomenal deep balls. I think Bryce Underwood might have a little bit more of a live arm pushing the ball down the field. Both throw really well. Off platform, this is probably Tavien St. Clair's best part of his game. He is so strong in the upper body, in that torso, where he doesn't really need to have his legs under him to make some really, really impressive throws. And look, the same thing for Bryce. Both of these guys, when you talk about arm talent, it doesn't get much better in the 20. It doesn't really get much better from high school quarterbacks than Bryce Underwood, Tavien St. Clair in terms of the things they can do with the football. Here's the biggest difference for me: athleticism. You look at Tavien St. Clair, the long speed's there. Well, when he gets going, he's a big body that can roll. The short area stuff, hey, can I make people miss? Can I that escapability? It's there, especially with the combination of his size. It's probably not elite. The long speed is really dang good. The short area stuff is good. It's probably not great. This is what really stuns me for Bryce. It is, you get into not just the cut ups and the highlights, but what he does from a down to down basis. He is an elite caliber athlete. The long speed, he's just about as fast as any quarterback on the football field, or any really player on the football field. But the short area stuff on some of those designed runs, when he's out in space and he's one-on-one with the defender, and he's making guys miss clean. He's making guys look silly at points, and that's why it came with the player comp Lamar Jackson. Now, I might take some heat for that because I know that's one that you don't see all that often for Bryce. That's kind of what I got from watching that whole senior year. He is incredibly gifted as an athlete. And if I were to kind of amend that player comps, I don't love just singular player comps. He's probably a little bit better of a thrower and probably a little bit less of an athlete than Lamar Jackson. But I don't I wouldn't give him the Josh Allen comp, because I think Josh Allen's much more of like, he's a big body that runs really fast. The short area stuff is not so great with Josh Allen. I look at Bryce and what he can do, making people miss and making people, for lack of better terms, look silly out in space. To me, it reminds me, it's closer to how we talked about Lamar Jackson going way back when he was coming out of high school. Then you look at Tavien St. Clair. Justin Fields is I feel really good about that comp. Like, they have almost identical frames. Justin Fields maybe a tad bit better of an athlete, and Tavien St. Clair probably a tad bit more accurate of a thrower of the football. But Justin Fields, it's almost a blend between Justin Fields and CJ Stroud. I'm using two Ohio State quarterbacks, but the accuracy kind of reminds me of CJ Stroud. The body and athleticism probably reminds me of Tavien St. Clair. Now, which quarterback are you taking? I personally lean Bryce Underwood, because I think the arm talent is very comparable. And then Bryce Underwood just gets the leg up from an athleticism standpoint. And now the conversation is, can Chip Lindsey in this Michigan offense access and maximize Bryce Underwood as an athlete, but also keeping him safe, and not having him take too many hits? That's kind of the age old discussion with these really athletic quarterbacks, even with a guy like Lamar's. Hey, how can we access and use Bryce Underwood's, what I think, elite athleticism, but also not have him take 10 to 15 hits a game? Because you look at Michigan, if Bryce Underwood's not on the football field, it's going to be hard for Michigan to win big time games. You look at Tavien St. Clair, one of the benefits is you're not as worried about him taking hits because he's pushing 230 pounds. And they've had really unique trajectories as football players, right? Bryce Underwood was kind of wire to wire the number one player in the country. And we kind of knew that kid was special after his freshman year. You look at Tavien St. Clair, he was a three-star prospect when he committed to Ohio State. The story is he went and camped at Ohio State in the summer. Ryan Day saw him, was like, this kid, we love him. We're going to offer him on the spot. And then he commits really shortly thereafter. The recruiting ranking kind of corrects as Tavien St. Clair goes through his junior and senior year, because he committed back between his sophomore and junior year, I believe. Two really good quarterbacks. It is going to be a blast watching these two go to battle for the next couple of years. Now, you get the feeling Bryce Underwood's good because the Michigan quarterback room ain't as good as Ohio State. You look at Ohio State, I think there's certainly a chance that Tavien St. Clair starts as a freshman. Would I necessarily pick that? No, because I know Ohio State likes Julian Sayin a lot. But I think Tavien St. Clair is going to push, because this kid is really talented as well. Let it fly in the comment section. I think it's a fascinating debate that we're going to see the answer over the next couple of years. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. If you got some problems with the player comps or the evaluations, let it fly in the comment section. That's the beauty of talking high school football, high school recruiting, is there's a lot of different ways that you can go about evaluating these football players. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.